What if you could build a complete, working web application in under 10 minutes without writing a single line of code yourself? Today, I'll show you how Cursor's Composer feature can transform the way you develop software, slashing hours of coding into minutes of prompting. Watch as we build an entire task management system with just some well-crafted prompts. We'll discover why knowing exactly what to ask for is the secret weapon of today's fastest developers. In this video, we're going to create a new project with Composer. Now imagine your boss comes to you and says, look, we've got tasks that are going all over the place. A lot of stuff's falling through the cracks. Sometimes I assign a task to you, you forget about it. Sometimes you assign a task to me and I forget about it. And we just want to build some small little application that we can run in our internal intranet that will help us manage all of our tasks and everything we're doing. So you say, okay, boss, got it. I'm going to do that. Now I have Cursor open here. And we notice here we can open a project, we can clone a repo or connect via SSH. Let's go ahead and clone a repository here. Now I've just created a blank repository on GitHub. Where do we want to put that? Well, we're going to put that in projects and KodeKloud Task Manager. I'll select that as a repository destination and it says, do you want to open it? Yes, I do. Okay, now I have a blank repository here. Now, of course, this is going to be an internal project, but we still want to use a repository for this just so we can track all of our changes and make everything good. Now, what we're going to do is use Composer. So I'll do Command L or Control L, and you can see here we have Chat, Composer, and Bug Finder. So one of the first things I want to do is just create a Flask application. Now I have a pretty good idea of how I want this to be set up. I want it to use Flask. I want it to use SQLite for the database. I don't want to use SQL Alchemy or anything like that. I just want this to be straightforward and simple. Okay, so I've got a terminal open here, and I have our Composer open here. Now with Composer, we can see we can add context, which we don't really have any context. Instead, we're going to tell this some very detailed instructions for a prompt to see if it'll create an application for us. And I'm going to be very specific here. So that's why I drug this over, because we're going to really type a lot of stuff in here. And I'm going to copy and paste so you don't have to watch me type it all. I prepared a prompt for this, and we're going to get into prompt engineering here very soon, but this is going to be a very detailed prompt about what we want, and we're going to see how Composer reacts to that. Now look at the objective here. Create a proof of concept task management application. Now I put proof of concept in there because I don't want this to be overly complicated, full of a bunch of different security things and stuff like that. We just want a basic application, right, for this case. So create a proof of concept task management application using Flask, latest version, with a SQLite database, relying on raw SQL, the SQLite 3 module, for all database interactions. Now I say that because most of these LLMs want to put in SQL Alchemy, which is fine, except I don't want that level of complexity to this with this application that we're building. If this were a big enterprise application, absolutely. This is just a small thing. So I'm specifying, hey, I would like you to just rely on raw SQL for this. Next, it says the application should. And in here, we're going to put in just some basic tasks that we want it to do. And the reason I'm doing this is if we don't put this in right away, it'll make a lot of assumptions. And it's kind of silly to talk about an LLM like a person. However, that's exactly what it seems like. Like this LLM will make assumptions and say, I think you need this, and I think you need this, and it'll put in a bunch of stuff we don't need for what we're using. So I'm going to say here, offer simple user authentication, no advanced security measures. So I don't need single sign-on, I don't need anything like that. Just user authentication is fine. Enable users to create tasks, assign tasks to other users, and set or update a task status. Now this is my boss and I sat down, we had a meeting, we got some requirements. That's what we want this to do. We just want it to be able to create a task, assign it to someone else, assign it to ourselves, and update the status. Then it says present a main view that lists all tasks, shows each task status, and indicates the user to whom it's assigned. Part of the requirements again. We want to include minimal front-end templates rendered through Flask, no JavaScript frameworks, because again, This will make an assumption and say, hey, you want React or you want Angular or something like that. And we don't in this case. So now we need to talk about some key requirements. Right? And so we can just say requirements here, and I will copy that in there so you don't have to watch me type it again. Use Python 3.13 or the latest release. Run within a virtual environment, self-hosted. No advanced production level security features are needed. So next we need to put another instruction here that says implement user and task data storage with SQLite and the SQLite Python module, no SQL Alchemy. Again, a single table schema or a minimal set of tables is sufficient. No migrations or versioning required. So again, we're just saying this isn't anything fancy. This is basic. We're just building this for learning purposes. Now let's talk about user authentication. This is the next part of it that I want to put in. And this might seem silly. I mean, we can say create a Flask application to manage tasks and hit enter, and it will create a Flask application that manages tasks, but it's kind of a roll of the dice whether it'll be what you want. So here we're saying user authentication, implement a minimal username password login system, no multi-factor authentication or complex role-based access is required. So that's something that's important to state, that everybody has equal access here. We want to store passwords in plain text or with a very simple hashing approach like MD5, SHA-1. Note that this is not secure for production. The next section is application functionality. And this is a good thing to sit down. If you're doing this in real life, you want to make a real software plan, you could probably copy and paste a lot of planning documents into here and requirements docs, things like that, and have them generated. So we want, for application functionality, this in here, we want user account creation, register a new user, login, log out flow, session-based, task management. That's going to be a subsection of our application functionality. Create a new task, including assigning it to a user, set or change task status, and we have, for example, not started, in progress, complete, blocked, or closed. We want to be able to edit or delete tasks as needed. It's optional, but nice to include. Let's talk about our main view, display a list of tasks along with their statuses and assigned users, include basic filtering by status or assigned user if feasible. And we don't even need to put in if feasible. We'll just put that in there and hope for the best, right? Now we'll talk about front-end templates. Use basic HTML, CSS templates rendered directly by Flask's templating system. So I'm putting that in because a lot of times it'll say, let's build a Flask API with a React front end or Angular or whatever, which is fine. That's perfectly reasonable and great to do for larger real projects. But this, we just want it simple. So we're just going to use Flask's templating system, which in my experience, Cursor knows Flask's templating system pretty well. So you can go in there and make tweaks and have it generate stuff. Deployment and configuration, we're just going to say, assume a self-hosted environment. Provide or describe any basic setup and run instructions. How to install dependencies and start the Flask server. So for this, we can probably start with just this prompt and start to work from there. So I will go in here. We have Composer open. Notice here we can select Claude 3.5 Sonnet, 3.7 Sonnet, etc. Let's go with 3.7 for this. Why not? Like I've said in other videos, Claude 3.5 Sonnet has been amazing for coding. 3.7 seems even better, so I think this will get us started where we need to be. So I will press Enter, and this might take a minute, but here we go. We have Flask Management Application. It's starting to spit out all of the things, and we've got a CMUS SQL there. We've got our Flask application being created. And so far, this is looking really good. Now, while this is going, we can go up here and look and say, oh, here's the project structure. We have an app.py, schema.sql, static for static files. We have a style CSS. Templates, we have base, dashboard, login, and register, and then requirements text for project dependencies. So that, to me, now I specified in here a couple of times in my original prompt that I wanted to keep this simple. And I can't stress this enough. And like I said, we're going to talk about prompt engineering a little bit more in this course, but what I want to say is the more specific you are about these types of things, the better the LLM responds. If you don't say anything, it can sometimes say, okay, we'll make a bare bones, simple MVP type thing. But a lot of times it will say, let's give you everything. We're going to throw the whole kitchen sink at this thing. We're going to build this giant Flask app. We're going to put it in a Docker container. We're going to use SQL Alchemy. We're going to do all of this stuff. We're going to throw in SSO. It just will throw every single thing at your project unless you say things like, I want this to be simple. I want it to be an MVP. I want it to be a proof of concept, etc. So I just want to stress that part of the reason this looks so simple is because we've told it that it needs to be simple. So now as we go through here, we can see we have database schema, a main application, HTML templates. Here's all the different templates. Here's some CSS styling. Requirements file so far just says Flask. It's telling us our setup and run instructions. So it's telling us to do python-m venv env. That isn't going to work. We'll talk about that. Then a pip install requirements.txt to install Flask. We can do Flask app initialize initdb, which I'm assuming is going to take this SQL and throw it into a SQLite database. And then we can run it with Flask --app run debug and open a browser. Now, before we do this, let's look at the features implemented so far. We have user authentication. We can register new users, log in, log out. Session-based authentication. We have task management, create new tasks, assign tasks to users, set and update task status, and delete tasks. So that's exactly what we've asked it for. We can view all tasks in a table format. We can filter them by status or assigned user. Database is a SQLite database with raw SQL queries. Awesome. Simple schema with users and task tables. This implementation provides a functional task management system with all the required features while keeping the code simple and focused on core functionality. That last part of the sentence is where it's telling us, hey, you told me you just wanted the core simple stuff. So this is core simple stuff. This is not an enterprise level application. It's not ready for 1 million users a day. It's just a simple thing that's exactly what we asked for. So in here, I have noticed where it says, let's start by setting up the project structure. With this, if you look at the apply, it says apply to schema.sql. That's not really an option, right? But we do have static and templates have already been created here as a part of it. So we don't need to apply anything here. But one of the things that I noticed early on when I started using this is I would click apply and it would just basically dump this text into whatever file it thought was logical. Right now it thinks schema SQL. So we'll look at this here and we'll go down. Now we have our schema.sql and I'm going to click accept. Okay, so I accept this file. Now I'm going to look at the main application. Now we have here initialize Flask app, secret key dev, change this to a random secret key in production, app config database, OS path join app instance path, task manager SQLite. So this is a SQLite database that we are going to have to create, or maybe it'll create it for us. We'll see. If we open this up, we can see it'll make directories if needed. If database is not present, connect to app database, etc. We have close DB, we have initDB here, where it's going to initialize by calling that schema SQL and create those tables. Looks like it's going to do, so as far as migration goes, it looks like it's just going to say drop table users and tasks if they exist and recreate them like this. So that initDB, we have to be careful with, right? Because it's going to wipe out our data if we're not careful. Luckily, we can run that, as you see, through a CLI. So we'll be careful when we're running that. We can see register simple password hashing, encode hex digest. That's SHA-1 hashing is not super great, but that'll work. We've got a route here. Now, if you're familiar with Flask, these are basic Flask routes that look good to me. We have root, we have register, we have login, we have logout, we have dashboard. Perfect. We have task create. We have task update, task delete. So this looks awesome. And this is great. And again, to say, the tool suggestions should be implemented in a smart way. You should know what you're doing, know what you're building. However, you're going to use this just to make it build things faster, right? So you have to be confident. Like I say that I've built enough Flask applications. I'm confident that I could build this application that's in front of me on my own. I might have to Google a couple of things for stuff I might have forgotten somewhere, but for the most part, I could sit down and write this and build it. No problem. That key is very important because we have to know what is being generated and what needs to be changed when it doesn't work. So I strongly advise people against doing the vibe coding thing where I'm going to pick a language and pick a technology and build a thing. That's great for playing around and experimenting, but if developing software is your job, then you need to understand this stuff. Here's some HTML. This looks like pretty typical Flask template. We have a login template. We have a register template, dashboard template. Here's some CSS styling. It's going to go into our static style CSS. This is very basic. We can always add on to that later. And then our requirements file, requirements.txt is just Flask 300. Now, we have all of these saved. So this is our application. It's already been laid out for us. Composer already told us what it was going to look like, and it looks like that. We have all of our templates here. We have an app PY here. Now, here's a caveat. I'm going to say that I don't like to use this thing where it lets you run the command. Again, we have apply to schema SQL. Sometimes it does say that we'll write it. So if we click this, it's just going to look at schema SQL and kind of say, eh. So sometimes you can run this command. Copy is probably your best bet, but a lot of times you can run these commands in here. One of the problems with that is the commands will go and create a new window when you click on it. And I'll do it later in this course. None of these are coming up as run this command. But when you click run this command, it opens up a new instance down here. And sometimes that instance has a virtual environment associated with it. Sometimes it doesn't, right? So when you click on this, say for instance, if this one were click run it and it says Flask run it, it'll create a new window that's not in the virtual environment and it'll say Flask not found, right? So it's just one of my little gripes that it's not quite exactly perfect. But we have the terminal open here. We can type in python-mvnv, and this isn't going to work. And watch, I'll show you why. Keyword not found, Python, because it needs to be Python 3, because I'm in a Mac. These are the kinds of things that you will find. This is why I say you have to know what you're doing. And this is one of the reasons I've been stressing this with all of these tools is you have to know, because if you just blindly copy it, it's going to generate Python, and I don't have that as alias. It's got to be Python 3, etc. This one, pip install, will work just fine. Of course, I need to do source and activate, which I didn't see that in the code. Oh, my bad. There it is right there. We do have Windows or Mac OS Linux. So now we can tell that we're active here by this little VNV in the parentheses. So now we know that we're in our virtual environment. Now we can paste in pip install -r requirements text. This will work. And there we go. We now have Flask. I am going to do pip install -- upgrade pip. Why not? All right. Next, it says Flask -- app initdb. Let's copy that. So that should initialize a database for us. And it says initialize the database. We can see instance. Here is a SQLite file. So of course, I'm going to do DB browser for SQLite. I'm going to go to our task manager instance and open it up. just because I want to see what it looks like. So I have SQLite Explorer open here. We have SQLite Sequence, of course. We have tasks. Now let's look at what the task table looks like. And of course, if we look at our CMS SQL, we're going to see that anyway. But we have an ID, title, description, status, created at, created by, and assigned to. These are foreign keys that go to users with a username and a password. Cool. I just wanted to take a look at that, close the database, just wanted to take a look at that and see what it looks like. So the next part is run the application. Flask --app run --debug. I'll warn you, this probably won't work right away, but that's okay. I feel like this has scaffolded out a lot of great stuff, and it actually does pop up and run with localhost 5000. Okay, let's open up a browser here, and we're going to do localhost 5000. And it says access to localhost was denied. You don't have authorization to view this page. And I'm guessing it's because we are listening on 127.0.0.0, and we should be listening on 0.0.0. But let's go ahead and I'll take this and say access to localhost was denied, copy. Now we can continue in Composer if we'd like, or we could start a new chat. Either one. And this one we can see we have SQL schema.sql. But what I want to do is code-based chat. So I'm just going to say access to localhost was denied. You don't have authorization to view this page. What I'm going to do here is, so we have submit as one option and submit code-based chat. I'm going to submit it as code-base, which means I need to hold down Control, Enter. And see, what I'm doing here is it's looking at my entire code base rather than just a single file or even the files that are open. So let's take a look and see what it says. Not logged in. Of course I'm not logged in. Flask server might not be running. It looks like the Flask server is running here. Missing an authorization header, etc. So database schema shows it's a multi-user system. Do you like me to provide a basic Flask route setup to handle authentication? We already have that, I believe. Specific parts. So that didn't solve the problem. So I'll go over here to Composer. We still have Composer open. And I can post the same thing in here. We'll be a little more clear and say the server is running. However, I get this error message. Possible causes. And remember what I said earlier about listening on the right port. I think I may be correct about that. So up here it says under app.run host equals 000. It's going to say to remove that. So let's go to app.py. We'll just kind of take a look at it. You can see the changes that they want to make right away. So here it's saying that it wants to add port 8080. It wants to remove this. So we'll say accept. We'll go up here. We can import logging because later it says, hey, you might want to debug this stuff. So now it's saying check the application at port 8080. So we'll save this file. We'll restart Flask. We can still see it says running on 5000. Of course, it's not. 8080, not. So it's giving us bad advice, right? It's basically saying, hey, change the port here, etc. We'll shut this down. I actually don't want that port, but I do want this host equals 000. Now you'll notice that this was not included, but yet it's saying to remove it here. And we're just going to add host, all zeros. We can use port 5000, should be fine. I don't have anything else running on it, but let's Flask run again. We'll go over here. And it still says access denied. So are we going to the right one? Let's go to our routes and make sure that we don't have to be logged in to see it. So our base route's going to be right here. If the user is in session, redirect to dashboard. If not, return URL for login. So we should be looking at a login URL here. Let's just type that in. That is also denied. So that would make sense. So we can allow, and we can specify a port here. We'll just specify port 5000. We'll restart this again. Let's type in 127.0.0.1, and we can see that the task manager comes up. But it does not come up with localhost. So I'm not sure. I've never seen that issue before, but that's okay. We'll do 127.0.0.1 5000 login. Honestly, I've used Composer several times, and generally there's more fixing that needs to happen before this, but hey, I'll take it. So we'll click on register, which takes us to the register route. I'm going to say Jeremy. My password is going to be super secure. It's going to be password 123. They'll never guess that. Register. And my one password is trying to grab that. But now we're back here to login. So I can say Jeremy, PSS word 123. Try to log in. Oh, there we go. And Google says, so this is good stuff right here, that Chrome has a pop-up here that says, change your password. The password just used was found in a data breach. I have no doubt that it was. Password 123 was found in a data breach. So we can open this up and we can say, create a new application. We're going to have to assign it to Jeremy because Jeremy's the only user. Status, let's started, create task. Task created successfully. Now, if I go back here to root, should kick me into the dashboard where I can see this task. Created a new application. Well, technically, it's in progress, let's say. Update it. There we go. Now status is in progress. So, like I said, Composer doesn't always work this smoothly. However, there's two reasons that this worked as smoothly as it did. For one, that Claude 3.7 model is incredible for coding. And for two, because we put in a specific enough prompt. We were so specific with that prompt, we can go back and look at it. We were so specific with that prompt that we told it exactly what we're looking for, right? We said, here's my objective, here's the requirements. We drill down even more into the requirements, user authentication, application functionality, et cetera, task management. And we were very specific about what we want and need out of this. That is super important, which leads me right into what our next video is going to be, which is essential prompt engineering. This technically is prompt engineering. Right here, because this beautiful prompt that we created, it's very specific, created this beautiful application. And like I said, part of it is the great prompt, part of it is Claude 3.7 Sonnet, is pretty incredible. We just had to make a couple of minor tweaks to have a working, awesome application.
The right prompt with strong AI can build a working app in minutes. This approach isn't about replacing your developer skills, it's about making them exponentially more productive. If you want to learn more about how to leverage Cursor better and turn it into your ultimate coding companion, check out my course at KodeKloud. The link is in the description below. Let's take your AI skills to the next level.